Imagine this. You've been told your whole life that kindness is the key to a fulfilling existence. Be kind, and the world will be kind back. But what if this feel-good advice is secretly wrecking your life? What if, instead of unlocking happiness, kindness is the very thing that's holding you back? Here's the tricky part. Kindness has a dark side. They say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, they say, and sometimes the very things you do to be a good person can lead you straight into a personal disaster. From constantly putting others before yourself to drowning in emotional burnout, kindness without limits is a dangerous game. Are you always the one saying yes when you really mean no? Or bending over backwards for people who wouldn't do the same for you? You're not alone. But here's the truth. Being overly kind doesn't make you virtuous. It makes you vulnerable. Stick around because we're about to unravel the ways kindness, when misused, can ruin your life. And trust me, this isn't what you've been told before. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss out. You're about to learn the brutal truths no one else will tell you. Lesson 1. Kindness can turn you into a people pleaser. Kindness feels good, doesn't it? That warm glow of doing something nice, the nod of appreciation, the little rush of being needed. It's addictive. But there's a thin line between being kind and losing yourself in the process. When kindness turns into a desperate need for approval, you're not just being nice, you're becoming a people pleaser. And people pleasing is a silent self-sabotage that can lead to exhaustion, resentment, and a life that isn't truly yours. People pleasing starts subtly. It begins with small compromises, saying yes to things you don't want to do, avoiding conflict at all costs, or putting others' needs ahead of your own. You tell yourself it's just kindness. You're doing it to keep the peace, to be liked, to avoid being the bad guy. But slowly, these little sacrifices pile up, and before you know it, you're stuck in a pattern where your worth is tied to making others happy. You become trapped in a cycle of overextending yourself, giving too much, and setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. The problem with people-pleasing is that it's an unsustainable way to live. When you constantly bend to the will of others, you're not showing kindness, you're showing fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. You teach people how to treat you, and by constantly prioritizing their needs over your own, you silently signal that your time, energy, and happiness are negotiable. You can't pour from an empty cup, they say, yet people pleasers keep pouring until they're emotionally dry. One of the most dangerous aspects of this behavior is that it blinds you to your own needs. You become so focused on maintaining harmony and avoiding conflict that you forget to ask yourself what you truly want. You say yes when you mean no, smile when you want to cry, and agree to things that make you feel uncomfortable. This constant denial of your true self creates an inner conflict that grows over time. And it's not just about burnout, it's about losing touch with who you are. When was the last time you made a decision based solely on your desires, without worrying about what others would think? Let's not forget that people-pleasing doesn't even guarantee you the approval you're seeking. The sad irony is that the more you give, the less you're appreciated. People begin to expect your endless kindness and take advantage of it. They know you'll always be there, bending over backwards, so why bother showing gratitude? You end up feeling undervalued and used, stuck in a loop of doing more to earn a sliver of recognition. No good deed goes unpunished, the saying goes, and when kindness turns into people-pleasing, this couldn't be more accurate. Breaking free from this cycle starts with setting boundaries, a word that might sound terrifying if you're used to saying yes all the time. Boundaries are not barriers, they're a form of self-respect. Saying no doesn't make you unkind, it makes you honest. It's about understanding that your needs matter just as much as anyone else's. Start small. Decline that meeting you don't have time for. Take a rain check on plans when you're exhausted, or simply be truthful about your capacity. Every time you say no to something that doesn't serve you, you're saying yes to yourself. Remember, kindness isn't about losing yourself to please others, It's about finding a balance where you can give without depleting your own well-being. So stop trying to be everything to everyone. You weren't meant to be. Prioritize your peace, value your time, and set boundaries that protect your energy. In the end, the kindest thing you can do is show up for yourself. Lesson 2. Kindness can lead to emotional burnout. We often think of kindness as an endless resource, something we can always give more of without consequence. But kindness, especially when it's overextended, can drain you faster than you realize. Emotional burnout from constantly giving without replenishing yourself is real, and it can sneak up on even the most well-intentioned people. The more you give, the more you're expected to give, until one day you wake up exhausted, resentful, and running on empty. This isn't because kindness is inherently wrong, but because giving without limits, rest, or self-care will eventually catch up with you. Burnout doesn't just happen overnight. It builds slowly, like a weight you barely notice until it's crushing you. It starts with the little things, agreeing to help a friend when you're already overwhelmed, taking on extra responsibilities at work because you don't want to let anyone down, or constantly being the emotional support system for others without ever asking for help yourself. You convince yourself that you're just being kind, that it's what good people do, but the truth is, you're overloading your emotional circuits. You feel like you're managing it all, until suddenly, you're not. The symptoms of burnout are insidious. You start feeling tired all the time, not just physically but emotionally. Tasks that used to feel easy now seem impossible, and you find yourself dreading the very things you used to enjoy. Your patience wears thin, and you snap at the slightest inconvenience. You might even start to resent the people you've been helping, not because they've done anything wrong, but because you're giving more than you have to give. You've poured so much into everyone else that there's nothing left for you. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, goes the saying, and when you allow yourself to be the go-to person for everyone's needs, you end up being drained of your own vitality. It's easy to mistake this burnout as a personal failing, like maybe you're just not strong enough or caring enough. But emotional burnout isn't a sign that you're weak, it's a sign that you're human. Even the kindest hearts need to rest, recharge, and say no sometimes. The danger lies in ignoring your limits and pushing through because you feel obligated to keep giving. In this state, kindness stops being a choice and starts feeling like a chore, something you're compelled to do rather than something you want to do. This is when kindness loses its true essence and becomes a burden. To avoid falling into this trap, you have to learn the art of self-care and balance. Self-care isn't just bubble baths and relaxation. It's about making deliberate choices that preserve your emotional and mental health. It's about recognizing when you've given enough and allowing yourself to take a step back without guilt. This might mean setting clearer boundaries with those who lean on you too heavily, delegating tasks when you're overwhelmed, or simply giving yourself permission to rest without feeling like you need to earn it. Learning to say, "I need a break," or "I can't help with this right now," isn't selfish, it's essential. When you take care of yourself first, you're not just recharging, you're ensuring that your kindness is genuine, intentional, and sustainable. Remember, you can't light up the world if your own flame has burned out. By protecting your emotional reserves, you're not only being kinder to yourself, but also to those around you, because you'll be able to give from a place of fullness rather than depletion. True kindness doesn't demand self-sacrifice. It encourages you to nurture yourself so you can continue to give freely and joyfully. Lesson 3. Kindness can make you a target for manipulation. Kindness is often celebrated as a strength, but it can quickly turn into a vulnerability when it's met with the wrong intentions. Manipulators, toxic people, and emotional vampires are experts at identifying those who are generous, compassionate, and always willing to help. They see your kindness not as a virtue but as a weakness they can exploit for their gain. What starts as a sincere effort to be helpful can quickly spiral into a cycle where you're being used, taken advantage of, and left feeling drained and betrayed. This dark side of kindness is rarely talked about, but it's crucial to understand if you want to protect yourself from becoming a perpetual target for manipulation. Manipulators are skilled at pushing your empathy buttons. They know exactly how to play the victim, twist your emotions, and pull on your heartstrings to get what they want. They'll use guilt, flattery, and sob stories to keep you entangled in their web. You may find yourself constantly doing favors, lending money, or providing emotional support, all under the guise of helping. But here's the catch: it's rarely reciprocated. You'll notice that when you need them, they're mysteriously unavailable, indifferent, or full of excuses. You're not in a mutually supportive relationship. You're in a one-sided transaction where your kindness is the currency. It's easy to get caught up in the belief that you're just being nice or that helping others is always the right thing to do. But when you're consistently giving without receiving, or when your kindness is met with entitlement rather than gratitude, it's a sign that you're being manipulated. These people know that all they have to do is play to your sense of duty or compassion, and you'll bend over backward to accommodate them. The result? You end up overcommitted, overwhelmed, and often resentful. Yet, because you've been convinced that this is what it means to be kind, you keep going back for more. The worst part is, manipulators have a way of making you question yourself. When you finally draw a line or say no, they'll twist the narrative, making you feel guilty or like you're the one being unreasonable. They'll say things like, "I thought you were a kind person," or "I really needed you and you let me down." These guilt trips are not about you failing them. They're about them losing control over you. This emotional manipulation can keep you trapped in toxic dynamics where your kindness is used against you, leaving you feeling stuck and conflicted. To protect yourself, it's essential to recognize the red flags of manipulation and understand that kindness doesn't mean blind generosity. It's okay to be compassionate, but you also need to be discerning. Not everyone deserves access to your time, energy, or empathy. Practice saying no without feeling the need to explain yourself. Set clear boundaries and stick to them, even when others try to push back. Remember, true kindness includes being kind to yourself first. It's not selfish to protect your well-being. It's necessary. You can still be a kind person without being a doormat. Kindness doesn't mean tolerating disrespect, manipulation, or constant one-sided relationships. It means giving thoughtfully and wisely, recognizing when someone's intentions are pure and when they're simply looking to exploit. By standing firm in your boundaries, you send a powerful message. Your kindness is a gift, not something to be taken for granted. You are not responsible for fixing everyone's problems, and it's perfectly okay to distance yourself from those who repeatedly misuse your generosity. Remember, kindness with discernment isn't just about preserving your peace. It's about valuing yourself as much as you value others. Lesson 4. Kindness can cause you to neglect your own needs. There's a subtle yet powerful narrative that often accompanies the concept of kindness. To be truly kind, you must put others before yourself. While this may sound noble, it's a dangerously misleading mindset that can cause you to neglect your own needs, leading to a life where you're constantly pouring into others while your own cup runs dry. The problem with this type of self-sacrificial kindness is that it often disguises itself as virtue, convincing you that prioritizing yourself is selfish or wrong. But in reality, neglecting your needs isn't kindness, it's self-abandonment, and it can leave you feeling unfulfilled, unappreciated, and deeply disconnected from your own desires. This pattern often begins with small acts: skipping lunch to help a colleague, sacrificing your weekend to assist a friend, or constantly saying yes to requests, even when you're exhausted. Each time you tell yourself it's just one more thing, one more favor, one more moment of kindness. But over time, these small sacrifices accumulate, and before you know it, you've built a life that centers around everyone else's needs but your own. You become the dependable one, the helper, the fixer, roles that are fulfilling in the short term, but devastating when they overshadow your own needs. It's easy to get caught up in the habit of giving, especially when others praise you for being so selfless. but deep down, you start to feel the cracks forming as your own well-being takes a back seat. The consequences of this neglect are far-reaching. When you continually prioritize others at your expense, you start to lose touch with your own identity. You forget what makes you happy, what you're passionate about, and what you need to feel fulfilled. Your goals and dreams get pushed aside because you're too busy making sure everyone else is okay. This can lead to feelings of emptiness, frustration, and even resentment, emotions that conflict with the very essence of the kindness you're trying to embody. You may find yourself wondering why you feel so drained, or why you're constantly overwhelmed, even though you're doing the right thing by helping others. The truth is, kindness without self-care is a recipe for burnout. Moreover, when you neglect your own needs, you teach others that your time, energy, and resources are always available, often leading them to take your kindness for granted. It's not that people are inherently ungrateful, but rather that your consistent self-sacrifice creates an expectation that you'll always be there, no matter the cost to yourself. This not only sets an unsustainable standard, but also devalues your efforts, turning what should be meaningful acts of kindness into obligations that weigh heavily on you. It's important to remember that your needs are just as valid as anyone else's, and honoring them doesn't make you any less kind. The key to breaking this cycle is to reclaim your right to self-care without guilt. Start by recognizing that taking care of yourself is not an act of selfishness, but a necessary foundation for genuine kindness. Set aside time to tune into your needs, whether that means saying no to extra commitments, carving out moments for rest, or pursuing activities that bring you joy. Practice self-compassion by allowing yourself to prioritize your own well-being, and understand that by taking care of yourself first, you're actually in a better position to offer meaningful support to others. It's not about withdrawing kindness, but about ensuring that your kindness is sustainable and doesn't come at the cost of your own happiness. Ultimately, kindness should be a two-way street that includes yourself in the equation. When you honor your needs, set healthy boundaries, and make self-care a priority, you become a fuller, more authentic version of yourself. This not only enriches your capacity to give, but also sets a powerful example for others on the importance of self-respect. Remember, true kindness starts within. By nurturing yourself, you protect your ability to continue showing up for others, not out of obligation, but out of genuine compassion and strength. One of the most dangerous aspects of kindness in this context is its ability to make you second-guess your perceptions. You might tell yourself, "They didn't mean it," or "Everyone has bad days," and while this can be true in small doses, a consistent pattern of toxic behavior isn't something to ignore. Manipulators and emotionally abusive people rely on your desire to see the best in them. They know how to tug on your empathy and make you question your judgment. When you constantly put yourself in their shoes, you lose sight of how their actions affect you. They might play the victim, blame you for overreacting, or dismiss your concerns altogether. Before you know it, you're stuck in a cycle of trying to be understanding at the expense of your own peace and sanity. This pattern of tolerating toxic behavior can show up in all areas of life. A friend who constantly criticizes you under the guise of joking, a family member who manipulates your emotions to get their way, or a partner who gaslights you into believing you're the problem. Kindness without boundaries enables this behavior, creating an environment where you feel obligated to keep giving, forgiving, and accommodating, even when it hurts you. The emotional toll is heavy. You start to feel drained, anxious, and trapped, yet you keep justifying their actions because you don't want to seem unkind. But remember, kindness is not about being a doormat. It's not about accepting bad behavior just to keep the peace. To break free from this destructive cycle, you must redefine what kindness means in your life. Kindness is not about allowing others to walk all over you. It's about respecting yourself enough to walk away from those who do. Setting boundaries is not only healthy, but necessary. You have the right to distance yourself from toxic individuals, no matter who they are. Saying no, calling out bad behavior, or even ending a relationship doesn't make you unkind. It makes you strong. It's crucial to prioritize your mental and emotional health over someone else's comfort, especially when their comfort comes at the cost of your well-being. Recognize that kindness can coexist with firmness. You can be compassionate and still refuse to tolerate mistreatment. It's about choosing to be kind to yourself first, understanding that your peace is not worth sacrificing for the sake of someone else's bad behavior. Establishing clear boundaries, holding people accountable, and knowing when to walk away are all acts of self-kindness that protect your energy and preserve your dignity. You deserve to be surrounded by people who respect and value you, not those who take advantage of your good nature. By setting standards for how you are treated, you not only protect yourself, but also cultivate healthier, more balanced relationships where kindness is mutual, not one-sided. In the end, real kindness uplifts and protects, and that includes protecting yourself from those who would misuse it. Lesson 6. Kindness can make you lose sight of your own boundaries. Kindness is a beautiful trait, often seen as the glue that holds relationships, communities, and societies together. But when kindness overshadows your ability to set and maintain personal boundaries, it becomes a slippery slope that can leave you feeling overwhelmed, used, and disconnected from your own sense of self. Boundaries are the invisible lines that protect your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. They define what is acceptable and unacceptable in your interactions with others. However, for those who prioritize kindness above all else, setting boundaries can feel like an act of selfishness or even cruelty. The result is a life where you are constantly giving more than you can afford, sacrificing your needs to keep others comfortable, and feeling guilty at the mere thought of saying no. This is not kindness. It's self-neglect disguised as virtue, and it can erode your sense of autonomy and self-worth. The erosion of boundaries often begins innocuously. Maybe you agree to take on extra work because you don't want to disappoint your boss, or you continually listen to a friend's problems without ever feeling like you can share your own. Each time you compromise a little piece of yourself, telling yourself that you're just being nice, you reinforce the idea that your boundaries are flexible or even non-existent. Over time, people begin to expect more from you because you've set the precedent that you're always available, always willing, and never complaining. You become the go-to person for everyone's needs, yet no one stops to ask about yours. Your kindness, once a source of connection, now becomes a silent expectation, a duty that you feel bound to fulfill even when it costs you dearly. One of the most profound impacts of losing sight of your boundaries is the quiet resentment that starts to build. You may not express it outwardly. After all, you're just being kind, right? But internally, the constant overextension wears on you. You start to feel undervalued and unappreciated because your efforts are rarely reciprocated in the way you need. The emotional labor you invest in others often goes unnoticed, leaving you depleted and alone in your struggles. This unspoken resentment isn't just a feeling, it's a signal that your boundaries have been crossed repeatedly and your kindness has been taken for granted. The kindness that was meant to build connections instead leaves you feeling disconnected from yourself, as you struggle to remember when you last did something purely for your own well-being. To reclaim your sense of self, it's essential to re-establish your boundaries and recognize that kindness does not equate to unlimited availability. Start by tuning into your own needs and acknowledging when you feel stretched too thin. Practice saying no, not as an act of defiance, but as a form of self-respect. It's okay to disappoint people sometimes. Their discomfort does not outweigh your right to protect your time, energy, and emotional health. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you're unkind. It means you value your well-being enough to ensure that your kindness doesn't come at the expense of your peace. Boundaries are not walls. They are guideposts that help you engage with others in a healthy, sustainable way. Furthermore, redefining kindness in your life means understanding that it's not about self-sacrifice, but about mutual respect. True kindness respects the boundaries of others and expects the same in return. When you honor your limits, you model for others how to treat you, creating healthier, more balanced relationships. You also preserve the quality of your kindness, ensuring that it comes from a place of genuine willingness rather than obligation. Remember, you are not responsible for everyone else's happiness, and it's not your job to be perpetually available. By setting clear boundaries, you protect your ability to offer kindness freely, without resentment, and with the authenticity that truly makes it meaningful. Boundaries are not the antithesis of kindness, they are the foundation that allows it to thrive without costing you your sense of self. Lesson 7. Kindness can lead you to avoid conflict at all costs. Kindness often comes with a deep-seated desire to keep the peace, to smooth over rough edges, and to avoid confrontations that could hurt or upset others. While this intention is admirable, it can also trap you in a pattern of avoiding conflict at all costs, even when that conflict is necessary. This avoidance isn't just about dodging arguments, it's about consistently putting your own feelings, needs, and opinions on the back burner to maintain a facade of harmony. Over time, this can cause significant harm to your relationships, your sense of self, and your ability to stand up for what truly matters to you. Conflict, when handled constructively, is a crucial part of authentic communication and growth. But when kindness drives you to constantly sidestep it, you end up living a life filled with unspoken resentments, unaddressed issues, and a persistent feeling of being unheard. Avoiding conflict often starts from a place of fear, the fear of being seen as mean, disagreeable, or difficult. You might think that by keeping quiet or going along with things, you're being considerate or maintaining the peace, but in reality, you're simply burying your true thoughts and emotions. This avoidance can manifest in many ways: agreeing to things you don't want to do, staying silent when someone crosses a line, or dismissing your feelings as not worth mentioning. You convince yourself that it's not a big deal, but every time you swallow your truth, you chip away at your authenticity. It's like slowly suffocating your voice until one day you look around and realize that you've built a life that caters to everyone but you. This conflict avoidance doesn't just hurt you, it also damages your relationships. When you don't express your needs or address issues as they arise, you create a superficial peace that lacks depth and honesty. The people in your life might think everything is fine because you never speak up, but underneath the surface, unaddressed problems simmer, creating a quiet but growing divide. Over time, the weight of all the things left unsaid can erode your connection to others, making you feel isolated and misunderstood. Conflict isn't something to fear. It's a natural and necessary part of any healthy relationship. It's how boundaries are set, misunderstandings are cleared, and trust is built. When you avoid it in the name of kindness, you deny yourself and others the chance to grow closer through real, honest communication. One of the most insidious effects of this behavior is the internal conflict it creates. You might appear calm and agreeable on the outside, but inside there's a storm of frustration, anger, and disappointment that has nowhere to go. This internalized conflict can manifest as stress, anxiety, or even resentment towards those who seem to take advantage of your kindness. You may start to feel like a doormat, even though it's your own reluctance to assert yourself that's keeping you in that role. The irony is that by avoiding external conflict, you create a far more damaging internal one that erodes your self-respect and keeps you trapped in a cycle of silent suffering. To break free from this pattern, it's essential to reframe your understanding of conflict. Instead of seeing it as something negative, view it as an opportunity for growth, clarity, and deeper connection. Practicing assertiveness doesn't mean you have to be harsh or confrontational. It means being honest about your feelings, even when it's uncomfortable. Start small by expressing your preferences and opinions in low-stakes situations, and gradually work your way up to addressing bigger issues. Remember, conflict doesn't have to be combative. It can be a compassionate exchange where both parties learn, understand, and adjust. Ultimately, true kindness includes the courage to be honest, even when it's hard. By facing conflict instead of avoiding it, you honor both your truth and your relationships. You give others the chance to know the real you, flaws and all, and create a space where kindness isn't about keeping the peace at your own expense, but about fostering genuine, healthy connections. Conflict, handled with kindness and respect, isn't the end of peace. It's the beginning of authenticity. Lesson 8. Kindness can prevent you from asking for help. Kindness is often linked to strength, the ability to give, support, and uplift others without expecting anything in return. While there's a noble side to this, it can also lead to a dangerous misconception that asking for help somehow diminishes your kindness or makes you appear weak. This mindset can trap you in a cycle of self-reliance where you're constantly giving to others but never allowing yourself to receive the same support. You become the person everyone turns to in times of need, but when you're struggling, you stay silent, convincing yourself that your problems are not important or that you don't want to burden anyone else. This unspoken rule that you must always be the helper, never the helped, is not an act of kindness. It's a self-imposed isolation that can lead to burnout, loneliness, and a deep sense of feeling unseen. The reluctance to ask for help often stems from the belief that you should be able to handle everything on your own. You tell yourself that you're strong, that you can figure it out, that it's your role to be the support system, not the supported. But no one, no matter how kind or capable, can do it all alone. By refusing to ask for help, you set an unrealistic standard for yourself and create a barrier between you and those who care about you. You deny others the opportunity to be there for you, to return the kindness you so freely give, and to connect with you on a deeper level. This constant self-reliance isn't a badge of honor. It's a heavy burden that you don't need to carry. This pattern can leave you feeling isolated, even in the midst of people who love and admire you. You might be surrounded by friends, family, or colleagues who see you as the rock, the one who's always composed, always in control. But beneath the surface, you might be struggling with your own challenges, silently wishing someone would notice and offer a helping hand. Yet, because you've conditioned yourself to never ask, those moments of vulnerability remain hidden. Over time, this can lead to feelings of resentment and fatigue as you continue to pour into others without receiving anything in return. It's not because people don't care, it's because they don't know you need help. They've come to see you as self-sufficient, and in the absence of you reaching out, they may assume you're fine, even when you're not. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a courageous act of honesty. It requires you to let down your guard and admit that you don't have all the answers, that you too need support, and that you deserve care just as much as anyone else. This vulnerability doesn't detract from your kindness, it enriches it. It shows that kindness isn't just about giving, but also about allowing others to be there for you. When you ask for help, you model healthy interdependence, showing those around you that it's okay to lean on each other. You create a more balanced, authentic connection where kindness flows both ways rather than being a one-sided exchange. To start breaking the habit of self-reliance, practice reaching out, even in small ways. Share your struggles with someone you trust, ask for advice, or simply let someone know you're having a tough day. These acts of openness build a bridge between you and those who care about you, allowing your relationships to grow stronger and more genuine. Remember, you're not burdening others by asking for help. You're giving them the chance to show their kindness in return. True strength lies in the ability to recognize your own needs and to have the courage to express them. Kindness, at its core, is a shared experience. By letting others in, you not only lighten your own load, but also deepen the bonds of connection and compassion. The next time you find yourself struggling, remember that asking for help isn't taking anything away from your kindness. It's adding to the richness of your human experience. You deserve to receive just as much as you give. Lesson 9. Kindness can keep you stuck in unfulfilling situations. Kindness often drives us to see the best in people and situations, encouraging us to give second chances, extend grace, and hold on to hope even when things aren't working. But this admirable trait can also backfire, keeping you stuck in unfulfilling jobs, toxic relationships, or life situations that drain your energy and limit your potential. When kindness becomes the reason you stay in places you've outgrown, it morphs from a positive force into a chain that binds you to mediocrity, discomfort, or even harm. It's easy to convince yourself that you're doing the right thing by being patient, understanding, or waiting for things to improve. But in reality, your reluctance to move on often means you're sacrificing your own happiness for the sake of not rocking the boat. Staying in unfulfilling situations usually starts with good intentions. You might tell yourself that your boss will eventually recognize your hard work, that your friend will change if you just give them more time, or that your partner's behavior will improve once the stress of life eases. You hold on because you're kind, you care, and you believe that things will get better. However, this optimism can easily turn into a trap when it stops you from acknowledging the reality of your circumstances. Kindness becomes a blinder, making you overlook red flags, ignore your own needs, and tolerate behavior that isn't acceptable simply because you don't want to seem harsh or unkind. One of the biggest dangers of staying too long in unfulfilling situations is the toll it takes on your mental and emotional well-being. The more you settle for less than you deserve, the more your self-worth begins to erode. You start to question whether you're asking for too much, whether your expectations are unreasonable, or if you're simply ungrateful for what you have. But this inner dialogue isn't reflective of the truth. It's a coping mechanism that keeps you stuck. Your kindness tells you to give more time, more effort, and more understanding. But all of this giving comes at a cost. You end up feeling depleted, unappreciated, and unfulfilled, all because you've prioritized the comfort of others over your own need for growth and change. It's also important to recognize that your kindness might be enabling the very behavior that keeps these situations stagnant. By always being the understanding one, you inadvertently allow others to continue taking advantage of your patience. Your partner has no incentive to change if you constantly forgive without consequence. Your employer will continue to overlook you if you never advocate for yourself. And your friend will keep crossing boundaries if you never set them. Kindness without boundaries is not kindness to yourself. It's a form of self-neglect that keeps you stuck in a loop of giving without receiving. Breaking free from unfulfilling situations requires a radical shift in perspective. Understanding that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is walk away. This doesn't mean abandoning people or situations at the first sign of trouble, but it does mean knowing when your efforts are no longer serving you. It's about valuing your own happiness and recognizing that staying in a place where you feel undervalued or stuck isn't noble. It's self-sabotage. Allow yourself to seek fulfillment, to prioritize your joy, and to pursue environments and relationships that uplift you rather than hold you back. Start by honestly assessing the areas of your life where kindness has kept you tethered to something that no longer serves you. Are you staying out of obligation, guilt, or the hope that things will change? Reflect on what you truly want and need, and have the courage to take steps toward it, even if it means making difficult decisions. Remember, leaving an unfulfilling situation isn't a failure of kindness. It's an act of self-respect and self-compassion. You deserve to thrive, to be in spaces where your kindness is valued and reciprocated, and to live a life that feels truly fulfilling. Sometimes the kindest choice is the one that sets you free. Lesson 10. Kindness can lead to self-identity. Loss. Kindness is often seen as a defining trait, something that shapes how others see you and, more importantly, how you see yourself. But when your identity becomes overly entwined with being the kind one, the helper, the peacemaker, the one who always puts others first, it can cause you to lose sight of who you truly are beyond your acts of kindness. This constant need to be agreeable, supportive, and self-sacrificing can blur your sense of self to the point where your own desires, needs, and even your personality take a back seat. You start to identify more with the roles you play in other people's lives than with your own authentic self, leading to a quiet but profound identity crisis that can leave you feeling hollow, disconnected, and unsure of who you are when you're not busy being kind. This erosion of self-identity happens gradually, often without you even realizing it. It starts with small compromises. You go along with decisions you don't agree with because you don't want to cause conflict. You hide your true opinions to keep others comfortable, and you shape your personality around what you think will be most pleasing to those around you. Over time, these small acts of self-betrayal accumulate, and your true self starts to fade into the background. You become a chameleon, constantly adapting to the needs and expectations of others, losing touch with what makes you unique. Your thoughts, beliefs, and passions become less important than maintaining the image of the kind, reliable person everyone knows you to be. One of the most insidious aspects of this loss of self is the way it disconnects you from your own happiness. You might find yourself going through the motions, meeting everyone else's needs while your own go unmet. You start to feel a nagging sense of dissatisfaction or emptiness that you can't quite pinpoint, because on the surface, everything seems fine. You're kind, you're liked, and you're doing all the right things. But beneath that exterior, there's a growing discontent as you realize that the version of yourself you're showing the world isn't the full, authentic you. Your dreams, ambitions, and even your opinions are buried under layers of politeness, accommodation, and self-sacrifice. This identity loss also makes it difficult to set boundaries, express your true feelings, or pursue your own goals, because you've conditioned yourself to be who others need you to be, not who you want to be. You may hesitate to assert yourself, fearing that doing so will disrupt the persona you've built. The constant need to be seen as kind can prevent you from making decisions that serve your own interests, leaving you stuck in situations that no longer align with your true self. The weight of this self-neglect can lead to anxiety, depression, and a pervasive sense of unfulfillment that no amount of external validation can fix. To reclaim your identity, it's crucial to reconnect with who you are beyond your kindness. Start by reflecting on what truly makes you happy, independent of what others expect or want from you. Take time to explore your interests, rediscover your passions, and give yourself permission to express your authentic thoughts and feelings. Practice self-assertion, not in a confrontational way, but in a way that honors your truth. Begin to say no to things that don't serve you, and don't be afraid to disappoint others in the process of being true to yourself. Remember, kindness is a wonderful part of who you are, but it is not the entirety of your identity. You are allowed to have boundaries, opinions, and needs that don't always align with others' expectations. By embracing your full self, flaws and all, you'll not only feel more grounded and fulfilled, but you'll also find that your kindness becomes even more powerful because it's coming from a place of authenticity, not obligation. In the end, true kindness starts with being kind to yourself, and that means honoring the whole, multifaceted person you are, beyond just the role of the kind-hearted giver. Lesson 11. Kindness can make you ignore your own boundaries in the name of forgiveness. Forgiveness is often seen as one of the highest forms of kindness, a way to release grudges, heal wounds, and maintain peace in your relationships. But when forgiveness is granted too easily, or used as a tool to overlook repeated hurtful behaviors, it can cause you to ignore your own boundaries, putting you in a cycle of enduring mistreatment and emotional pain. Forgiveness, when misunderstood, can become less about healing and more about excusing behavior that should never have been tolerated in the first place. While it's essential to let go of anger for your own well-being, repeatedly forgiving without consequence can lead to a pattern where your kindness is taken advantage of and your boundaries are constantly crossed, leaving you feeling powerless and disrespected. The urge to forgive often comes from a desire to keep the peace and to avoid the discomfort of conflict or confrontation. You might find yourself thinking, "Everyone makes mistakes," or "they didn't mean to hurt me," which can be true in isolated incidents. However, when these excuses become habitual, you start to prioritize the other person's comfort over your own needs for respect and safety. This cycle of perpetual forgiveness teaches others that they can cross your boundaries without fear of real consequences. Over time, you become a safe target for repeated offenses, whether it's a friend who constantly cancels plans last minute, a partner who repeatedly breaks promises, or a family member who regularly disrespects your feelings. Your willingness to forgive becomes less about compassion and more about self-neglect, as you continually put your own needs and standards aside in the name of maintaining harmony. This pattern can lead to a dangerous erosion of your self-worth. Each time you forgive without holding the other person accountable, you're essentially telling yourself that your feelings don't matter, that your boundaries are flexible, and that maintaining the relationship is more important than your own dignity. The emotional toll of this kind of misplaced kindness can be heavy. You start to feel used, unheard, and deeply frustrated, but you don't express these feelings because you've conditioned yourself to let things go. The irony is that while forgiveness is meant to set you free, this version of it only binds you tighter to the very behaviors that hurt you. It keeps you stuck in a loop of pain, guilt, and unfulfilled expectations. To break free from this cycle, it's essential to redefine what forgiveness means in the context of your boundaries. Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing someone to continually disrespect you. It means letting go of resentment while still protecting yourself from further harm. It's okay to forgive someone and still set firm boundaries that prevent them from hurting you again. For instance, you can forgive a friend for letting you down, but also decide not to rely on them in the same way moving forward. Forgiveness doesn't obligate you to stay in a situation that makes you uncomfortable or unhappy. It's a personal, internal process that can coexist with necessary distance and self-protection. Establish clear consequences for repeated offenses and communicate your boundaries without hesitation. Let people know how their actions have affected you and what you will no longer tolerate. This doesn't make you unkind, it makes you self-respecting. True forgiveness is not about giving others endless chances. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of bitterness while still valuing your own worth. By setting and enforcing your boundaries, you ensure that your kindness remains a gift, not an open invitation for mistreatment. In doing so, you create healthier dynamics where forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting your needs, but honoring them, and where your kindness is both given and received with respect. Lesson 12. Kindness can trap you in a cycle of over-responsibility. Kindness often carries with it an unspoken sense of responsibility, the belief that it's your job to fix problems, help others at any cost, and ensure everyone around you is happy and cared for. While this can make you a dependable and compassionate person, it can also lead you into a relentless cycle of over-responsibility, where you take on more than your fair share of burdens. You start to feel accountable for everyone's feelings, problems, and well-being, constantly stepping in to solve, soothe, or save. This overwhelming sense of duty might feel like kindness, but in reality, it's a heavy and unsustainable load that can leave you exhausted, overwhelmed, and feeling like you're never doing enough. Over time, this compulsion to be responsible for everything and everyone can cause you to neglect your own needs, health, and happiness, as you're too busy managing everyone else's lives. The cycle of over-responsibility often begins subtly. You might start by offering to help a friend with a project, covering for a colleague's mistakes, or always being the emotional anchor in your family. Initially, it feels good to be the go-to person, the problem solver, the one who others can rely on. But as this role solidifies, you begin to absorb responsibilities that aren't yours to carry, mistaking this constant caretaking as a requirement of your kindness. Before you know it, you're juggling other people's problems as if they were your own, saying yes to every request, and feeling guilty if you even consider putting your needs first. This overextension becomes a way of life, and each time you take on more, it reinforces the idea that you must keep giving, no matter the personal cost. One of the most damaging aspects of over-responsibility is how it robs you of your own autonomy. You become so enmeshed in other people's lives that your identity and sense of self-worth become tied to your ability to help and please. You might struggle with saying no, fearing that doing so would make you appear selfish or unkind. However, constantly putting others before yourself leads to burnout, resentment, and a profound sense of being trapped. You may find yourself feeling resentful toward those you help, not because of their actions, but because you've lost the ability to prioritize your own needs. You've trained yourself to believe that everyone else's needs are more important than your own, leading to an imbalanced life where your own well-being is always second place. This sense of over-responsibility is often compounded by guilt and the mistaken belief that stepping back means you're abandoning those who depend on you. But here's the truth. You're not responsible for fixing everyone's problems, and doing so doesn't make you kinder. It makes you overwhelmed and undervalued. True kindness involves understanding your limits and recognizing that it's okay to let others face their own challenges. Helping someone occasionally is a beautiful act of compassion, but carrying their burdens indefinitely only prevents them from growing and learning to solve their own problems. Your kindness should empower others, not enable them to rely on you to the point of your detriment. Breaking the cycle of over-responsibility requires redefining what it means to be kind. Start by setting clear boundaries about what you can and cannot do, and learn to say no without guilt. Recognize that your worth is not measured by how much you can give or how many problems you can solve. Prioritize your own needs and allow yourself to step back from situations that are not yours to fix. It's perfectly okay to support others from a distance, offering encouragement without sacrificing your own well-being. Remember that kindness isn't about carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. It's about being present, supportive, and compassionate without losing yourself in the process. Ultimately, the kindest thing you can do for both yourself and others is to honor your own limits. By setting boundaries, you protect your energy and ensure that your kindness is sustainable. You teach others the importance of self-reliance, and you create a more balanced dynamic where you are valued for who you are, not just for what you can do. Letting go of over-responsibility frees you from the pressure to be everything to everyone and allows you to focus on living a life that is fulfilling, healthy, and authentically kind to yourself. Lesson 13. Kindness can cause you to overlook. Red flags. Kindness is often celebrated as a beautiful quality, one that encourages empathy, understanding, and second chances. But in the pursuit of being kind, you may find yourself overlooking red flags, those subtle but crucial warning signs that something isn't right in a relationship, job, or situation. When kindness makes you ignore these signals, you risk getting entangled in toxic dynamics that can harm your mental, emotional, and even physical well-being. Whether it's staying in a friendship that drains you, excusing a partner's hurtful behavior, or tolerating a work environment that undermines your worth, kindness can sometimes blind you to the truth that not everyone has good intentions, and not every situation deserves your loyalty. The urge to give people the benefit of the doubt, to see the best in others, or to avoid making harsh judgments can trap you in cycles of mistreatment, where your kindness is taken for granted and your boundaries are repeatedly crossed. This tendency to overlook red flags often begins with small compromises. Maybe you ignore that uneasy feeling when someone makes a disrespectful comment, or you brush off the discomfort of being undervalued at work because you want to be a team player. You rationalize these moments by telling yourself, "It's not that bad," or "They didn't mean it," and you keep pushing forward in the name of kindness. However, every time you disregard these warning signs, you set a precedent that others can continue behaving this way without consequence. This not only erodes your self-respect, but also emboldens the other party to push further, knowing that you're unlikely to call them out or set firm boundaries. Kindness in these situations becomes less about compassion and more about self-betrayal, as you sacrifice your comfort, safety, and well-being to avoid conflict or uncomfortable truths. The impact of consistently overlooking red flags can be profound, leading to patterns of emotional exhaustion, stress, and resentment. You might find yourself in relationships where you're constantly giving but never receiving. jobs that drain you without recognition or reward, or friendships that feel more like obligations than genuine connections. Each overlooked red flag chips away at your confidence and sense of self-worth, making you question whether you're too sensitive, too demanding, or too critical. You may start to doubt your instincts, ignoring that inner voice that warns you when something isn't right. This self-doubt becomes a breeding ground for more exploitation, as you're left feeling powerless to change your circumstances because you've conditioned yourself to prioritize kindness over self-preservation. To break free from this destructive pattern, it's crucial to understand that kindness does not mean ignoring the truth. You can be compassionate and still hold people accountable for their actions. It's not unkind to recognize when someone's behavior is harmful, or to acknowledge when a situation no longer serves you. Learning to trust your instincts is key. Those gut feelings that tell you when something is off are there to protect you, not to be brushed aside. Start by paying attention to how people make you feel, not just what they say. Actions speak louder than words, and consistent patterns of disrespect, inconsistency, or manipulation are red flags that should not be ignored. Practice setting boundaries and enforcing them with clarity and confidence. If someone repeatedly crosses a line, it's okay to distance yourself, speak up, or even walk away. Remember, your kindness should never be at the expense of your own dignity or peace of mind. It's okay to give people chances, but it's also okay to recognize when those chances have been exhausted. By staying true to your values and honoring your intuition, you protect yourself from harm and ensure that your kindness remains a strength, not a vulnerability. Ultimately, true kindness starts with being honest with yourself about what you see, feel, and deserve, and refusing to let the desire to be nice override your need to be safe, respected, and valued. Lesson 14. Kindness can lead you to undervalue your own worth. Kindness is often lauded as a selfless act, something that should be given freely without expectation. However, this mindset can sometimes lead to a dangerous habit, undervaluing yourself and your contributions. When you constantly put others first and never pause to recognize your own worth, you can find yourself trapped in a cycle where you give endlessly without ever feeling deserving of receiving. This can manifest in various aspects of life, whether it's at work, where you over-deliver but shy away from asking for a raise or promotion, in relationships, where you go above and beyond for others but accept less in return, or even within your family, where you're always the one who compromises, sacrifices, and adjusts without ever feeling entitled to the same effort from others. Kindness, when not balanced with self-respect, can become a path to self-neglect, where your own needs, talents, and value are consistently overlooked, not just by others, but by yourself. This pattern of undervaluing yourself often starts with small, seemingly harmless decisions. You downplay your achievements because you don't want to seem boastful, you take on more work because you don't want to let anyone down, or you let others take credit for your ideas because it feels awkward to assert yourself. Over time, these small acts accumulate into a mindset where you start to believe that your worth is solely defined by what you can do for others, rather than who you are. You become the dependable one, the giver, the caretaker, yet you rarely stop to think about what you deserve in return. This kind of self-effacing kindness can be deeply draining, as you pour so much into everyone else's cups that your own remains perpetually empty. The more you give without acknowledgement or appreciation, the more your self-esteem takes a hit, reinforcing a narrative that your value lies only in your ability to serve others. This undervaluation can also lead to a lack of boundaries, as you find yourself constantly saying yes when you want to say no, accepting tasks that aren't your responsibility, or putting up with behavior that you would never tolerate if it were directed at someone you care about. It's as if you set lower standards for yourself, believing that being kind means being endlessly accommodating. But in reality, this is not kindness. It's a form of self-abandonment that teaches others to undervalue you too. When you don't advocate for your own worth, you inadvertently send a message that it's okay to take you for granted. This can result in a life where you feel perpetually unappreciated and overextended, as your efforts are met with indifference rather than the recognition and respect they deserve. To break free from this self-defeating cycle, it's essential to start valuing yourself as much as you value others. This doesn't mean you stop being kind. It means you become kind to yourself first. Recognize that your needs are just as important as anyone else's, and that your time, energy, and talents are valuable. Practice acknowledging your achievements, setting fair expectations for how you should be treated, and learning to say no without guilt. Don't shy away from asking for what you deserve, whether it's more respect, better compensation, or simply a reciprocation of the kindness you offer. Your worth isn't diminished by standing up for yourself, it's affirmed. Being kind doesn't mean diminishing your own light to let others shine. It means shining brightly and encouraging others to do the same. By valuing yourself, you set a standard for how you expect to be treated, creating a more balanced and fulfilling dynamic in your relationships. You teach others that kindness is a two-way street and that respect and appreciation are essential parts of any healthy interaction. In the end, true kindness includes recognizing your own value, embracing your worth, and never allowing your generous spirit to overshadow the importance of treating yourself with the same care and consideration that you so freely give to others. Lesson 15. Kindness can cause you to put off difficult decisions. Kindness often encourages us to avoid causing discomfort, whether it's for ourselves or others. While this instinct is rooted in compassion, it can also lead to a pattern of putting off difficult decisions that need to be made. When faced with choices that could upset someone, disrupt the status quo, or bring about confrontation, the kind-hearted tend to delay, hoping things will somehow resolve on their own or improve over time. You may stay in a job that no longer fulfills you because you don't want to disappoint your employer, remain in a relationship that's clearly not working because you're afraid of hurting the other person, or avoid having tough conversations with friends and family to keep the peace. This reluctance to make hard decisions isn't just about avoiding discomfort, it's about letting fear dictate your actions under the guise of kindness, leading to a stagnant life filled with unresolved issues and growing dissatisfaction. Delaying difficult decisions often starts with the best intentions. You tell yourself that you're giving someone another chance, being patient, or simply waiting for the right moment. However, these justifications often mask a deeper avoidance of taking responsibility for your own happiness and well-being. Each time you delay, you allow the situation to fester, and what might have been a small problem grows larger and more complex. You become stuck in limbo, neither fully committed nor willing to let go, and this indecision eats away at your confidence and sense of control. By consistently avoiding hard choices, you hand over the reins of your life to circumstance, allowing external factors to dictate your path, rather than making deliberate decisions that align with your values and desires. The emotional toll of this avoidance is profound. You may find yourself feeling trapped, anxious, and resentful, not only toward the situation but also toward yourself for not taking action sooner. These feelings can bleed into other areas of your life, affecting your relationships, your work, and your overall sense of fulfillment. The longer you wait to make a decision, the more daunting it feels, creating a vicious cycle where fear of consequences paralyzes you into continued inaction. You may also start to doubt your judgment, wondering if you're too sensitive, too demanding, or simply incapable of making the right choice. This self-doubt compounds the pressure, and the gap between where you are and where you want to be widens, leaving you feeling powerless to change your circumstances. Breaking this cycle requires a shift in mindset, understanding that difficult decisions are not acts of unkindness, but necessary steps toward living authentically and with integrity. Every choice you make, no matter how hard, shapes the direction of your life. By postponing tough decisions, you're essentially choosing to remain stuck, which ultimately does a disservice to everyone involved, including yourself. Taking action, even when it's uncomfortable, is a powerful declaration of self-respect and courage. It's about acknowledging that you deserve to live a life that feels right for you, not one dictated by fear or misplaced kindness. Start by confronting the decisions you've been avoiding. Write down what's been holding you back and consider the cost of staying in the status quo versus the potential benefits of taking action. Remember that being kind does not mean sacrificing your own happiness or enduring situations that no longer serve you. Practice making smaller, less intimidating decisions to build your confidence and gradually tackle the bigger ones with a clear mind and a firm resolve. Recognize that discomfort is a natural part of growth and that the temporary unease of making a tough decision is far less painful than the long-term regret of never taking control of your own destiny. True kindness is about honoring your needs as much as you honor those of others. It's about making choices that are aligned with your values, even when those choices are difficult. By embracing the courage to make the hard calls, you not only free yourself from stagnation, but also set an example for others to follow. You show that kindness isn't about avoiding discomfort. It's about facing life with honesty, making decisions that reflect your true self, and moving forward with a sense of purpose and self-respect. So, here we are. We've walked through the dark side of kindness, peeling back the layers to reveal how it can sabotage your life in unexpected ways. But before you leave, take a moment to reflect. How many of these lessons hit closer to home than you'd like to admit? The reality is, kindness isn't just about smiling through everything and being endlessly accommodating. It's also about having the courage to set boundaries, protect your peace, and prioritize yourself when needed. If you've ever felt drained, unappreciated, or stuck because you were just trying to be nice, you're not alone. And that's exactly why we need to talk about this more. Now let's get real for a second. The world constantly tells us that kindness is the key to a good life, but rarely does anyone discuss the price you pay when that kindness is unchecked. You might think, it's just who I am, or I don't want to change. But the truth is, kindness without balance doesn't serve anyone, not you, and not the people you're trying to help. It's time to reclaim your kindness, redefine it on your own terms, and make sure it's a force that uplifts you rather than drains you. If any of these lessons struck a nerve, it's because deep down, you know you deserve better than being a martyr for everyone else's needs. But this conversation doesn't end here. It's just the beginning. Let's keep this dialogue going, not just in our minds but out loud where it matters. Drop a comment below and share which lesson resonated most with you. Have you been the overgiver? The one who can't say no? Or maybe you've been trapped in a cycle of forgiveness that left you feeling used? Your story might just be the wake-up call someone else needs. And trust me, your voice is more powerful than you think. And hey, if you found any value in this, if even one sentence made you rethink how you're living your life, then don't let it stop here. Hit that like button. It's a small action that makes a big difference, not just for the channel, but for spreading this message further. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? There's so much more to uncover about living authentically and embracing a balanced life, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Turn on those notifications so you're the first to know when new content drops. We're just scratching the surface, and the journey to reclaiming your power and protecting your kindness is one you don't want to miss. Remember, every time you engage, whether it's liking, commenting, or sharing, you're not just supporting the channel, you're helping build a community of people who are ready to take back control of their lives. You're saying, I'm here for this, I'm ready to live differently. And that's not just powerful, it's transformational. So, what's your next move? Are you going to keep playing nice at your own expense, or are you ready to make a change? The choice is yours, but whatever you decide, know that you're not alone. This is your space, your community, and together, we're rewriting the narrative around kindness, one that empowers rather than imprisons. Don't just be kind in a way that honors who you are. Let's keep this energy going. Comment, like, subscribe, and stay tuned. There's a lot more coming your way, and trust me, you won't want to miss it.